TRON Ares OST by 9 Inch Nails. It almost feels like, this is destiny for 9 Inch Nails to end up doing this soundtrack. Of course, all the TRON soundtracks from the very first one were created by very innovative electronic artists. Wendy Carlos made the first TRON movie. Daft Punk was very well known for that second TRON movie. And so it just makes sense that a guy like 9 Inch Nails, who has a legacy of fantastic, innovative electronic music, could take it over. And especially, again, since, Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor have not only maintained this 9 Inch Nails identity over the, last several decades, but have also been very successful as soundtrack artists in their own right. And I think it's really interesting and smart marketing for them to use the 9 Inch Nails identity and associate it with this. Of course, on the one hand, it's going to sell albums, right? But on the other hand, it kind of constrains the sounds that they would use. In a normal soundtrack, the identity of the person writing the soundtrack should be kind of removed a little bit from the final product. But as soon as you slap the name 9 Inch Nails on it, it's going to have certain associations. And I think those associations enrich the soundtrack in this case. And one of the things I think is actually an improvement on this one from previous TRON soundtracks is, like, for example, the Daft Punk soundtrack was a fantastic soundtrack for TRON Legacy. But I was always a little bit disappointed that it wasn't more electronic. It was very orchestral with some electronic stuff mixed in, and Wendy Carlos kind of did this to a degree. This album is 100% electronic, almost no orchestra in it, 100% synthesizers and synthesis straight from the brain and hands of Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor. And for me, the mark of a great soundtrack is one that can stand alone as its own listening experience. And I think that this is another place where the TRON Ares soundtrack succeeds fantastically well, because it can be listened to as a 9 Inch Nails album. There are 4 vocal tracks in the album that are spread out within it, and they are clearly 9 Inch Nails. So then you also have the cues in there, 1.5, 2-minute instrumental cues that also flow together very well, and they're spaced out through the entire thing. So once you kind of feel like you're in soundtrack land, there's a 9 Inch Nails song, and soundtracks, and then 9 Inch Nails has a really great pacing and continuity through it throughout the whole thing, so it never feels like it wears out. And the way that he kind of hid a 9 Inch Nails EP within the soundtrack makes it just, a very listenable experience. And of course, say what you want to about the TRON Ares movie. I personally loved it, but at the very least, you could say that it is a fantastic long-form video for the new 9 Inch Nails album.